Locked On Podcast Network and Odyssey present Locked On Sports Today.
The Colorado Avalanche completed one of the most dominant postseason runs in recent history to win the Stanley Cup. What will the Browns do at quarterback if they don't have Deshaun Watson? And Deebo Samuel still wants to be traded. What's his most likely future? I'm Peter Bukowski, starting your day with the can't-miss stories and biggest debates in sports. You're Locked On Sports Today.
Searching all major sports. Found.
Let's start with the biggest story.
Today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props and odds and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. Lightning had struck twice in the Stanley Cup Finals the last two seasons, but the Colorado Avalanche made sure in Game 6 it would not strike a third. They get a 2-1 win in Game 6 in Tampa with the honor of raising Lord Stanley's Cup. Joining me now from Locked On Avalanche, Chris Maselli. And Chris, this was a series that, despite finishing in 6 games, was razor thin, that margin. 4 of these games decided by just a single goal. So what was the deciding factor against the 2-time defending champs?
You know, I think when you look back, oddly enough, for the Avalanche, they seemed to get stronger as the games went on. And not that Tampa really went the opposite direction. It wasn't like, two ships passing in the night type of thing. It was just the Avs just... maybe it's training in the altitude, where as games went on, they just got stronger. And it was more and more difficult for Tampa to really slow them down. And in the first 2 games, the Avs speed really hurt Tampa, and they were able to get, they had a lot of open ice. Tampa clamped down on that as the series went on. But I think Tampa, surprisingly, they just looked tired at the end of games, and the Avalanche didn't, and they don't. And I think it was just a stamina thing, because we've said before, I've come on here, and these two teams are very evenly matched. You know what I mean? And you saw it, like you said, throw out those 2 games that were just flukes. That happens. The other 4 games, that's what people were expecting in this series. And it's just, you could go out and play this game again in this series again, and you might get different outcomes. That's how close these 2 teams are. It was a great series to watch.
We came into this final talking about the pair of sweeps for the Avalanche and the season that they had, the points that they put up. It's hard to do this in the moment, right? And try and make these sorts of historical comparisons. But just off the top of your head, how do you think historically we're going to remember this season in terms of how impressive it was from the Avs?
This is something Kyle, my co-host, and I have talked about a few times towards the end of the season, kind of going into the playoffs. Because, when you look back, it's going to be hard to not put this team as the best Avalanche team in franchise history. They have the most points in a season. The only thing that they didn't get was the President's Trophy. And I don't think anybody's really going to hold that against them. There's some people that say like, that's not all that. I don't think
they're going to mind. They won the Stanley Cup.
Yeah, exactly. But in the grand scheme of like, well, are they the best? I don't think people are going to say like, well, they didn't. Oh, my cat just popped a balloon over here. She's happy. So anyway, I think you will. I think you're going to look back and say like, this is the best Avalanche team in the history of the franchise, because they had the most points, and obviously they won the Stanley Cup. They had the best defenseman in the league in Cale Makar. You could just go on and on about what this team has accomplished.
We talk about the difference and the razor thin margin of these 2 teams. Nazem Kadri came back for the second half of this series. The Avs win 2 of those 3 games, including Kadri had the game winner in Game 4. What kind of impact do you think he had on this series?
Huge. He's been one of their most important players all season long. Had a career year, and then gets injured, and in round 3, and it's up in the air if he's even going to play in the Stanley Cup final. But knowing Nazem Kadri, and this being his first appearance in the Stanley Cup, you knew he was going to do everything possible to come back and not hurt his team in the process. So when he came back, it wasn't like, all right, I'm just going to come back for one game, maybe give you guys a push, and then good luck after that. No, when he came back, he was there for the duration of the game, and to come back in that first game, and he was kind of limited. Jared Bednar said, he's not limited. Well, he didn't take any faceoffs, and he wasn't taking slap shots, but he can still skate. He can still throw his body around. He can still take snapshots. Like, there was a lot that he has to offer. And even in this game, he was back on the top unit power play, which he hadn't been. So I think he was healing more as and once he got back in, he continued to heal. He is, this season, a huge impact on this team. And I don't want to get too far ahead of myself because it's celebration time, but what is he going to do in the offseason? He's an unrestricted free agent. The fans want him back. I know the league wants him back, but he had a career year. And is there going to be a team out there that throws crazy money at him that the Avalanche can't match? I don't know. We'll answer that in future episodes of Locked On Avalanche. But for right now, him coming back, because they lost other guys too. Andre Burakovsky was hurt. Sam Girard was hurt. They had injuries. And, for him to come back was just a huge get for this team.
Quickly here as we finish up, what will be your enduring memory? Maybe it's an image, maybe it's a play from this season and this run.
So for the regular season, I will say the Cale Makar in overtime against the Chicago Blackhawks just turned a spinorama move on Kirby Dach and just roofed it on Marc-Andre Fleury. It could be the goal of the year. It's definitely a nominee for it. And then in the postseason, it's tough. The Darren Helm goal with like less than 5 seconds left to get past St. Louis was just unbelievable. I think for a regular season and for a postseason, and the Nathan McKinnon going coast to coast goal as well in the postseason was great. There's so many from this year, and as the days go on, I will be reminiscing with a massive smile on my face because of this season. It was one for the ages.
Listen to Locked On Avalanche as Chris and his co-host Kyle Sullivan will have you covered every day on all things Colorado Avalanche on every podcasting app, including the Odyssey app. Thanks for making Locked On Sports today your first listen. Coming up, Deshaun Watson awaits the NFL's ruling on how long a suspension he will receive, if any. Will he play at all in 2022? Here's what to look for on BetOnline, your number one spot for all your daily gambling needs. Monday's slate of MLB games provides some value. The Cleveland Guardians are on a roll and still find themselves home dogs to the Minnesota Twins. BetOnline has the Guardians money line plus 117. The over-under in the Oakland Athletics and New York Yankees matchup does not reflect the powerhouse lineup for the Bronx Bombers. BetOnline is the over-under at 8.5. And the LA Dodgers and Colorado Rockies are expected to score quite a bit at Coors Field. BetOnline has that over-under at 11.5. BetOnline, where the game starts. Both managers and 6 players were ejected from the Angels-Mariners game on Sunday after a brawl ensued following Jesse Winker being hit by a pitch. The brawl was not just in response to that singular event, but multiple events over the last 2 days. As to the absurdity of the brawl, our own Ty Dan Gonzalez of Locked On Mariners does not see this as a mere coincidence.
It's incredible what insecurity will do to someone, or in this case, an entire team. This is Ty Dan Gonzalez, host of the Locked On Mariners podcast. It's been a frustrating season for the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim, to say the least. They're 5 games under 500, nearing the halfway point of the year, despite having 2 of the greatest players to ever play the sport of baseball, and they haven't even finished above 500 since a guy named Jerry Dipoto was their general manager. Therefore, it's pretty understandable that this team, which recently fired its manager, would be willing to try almost anything to ignite a spark, even manufacturing a beef with the Mariners that, let's be real about it, did not exist before Sunday. I put on the tinfoil hat. If it wasn't clear as day, the Angels orchestrated one of the most absurd displays I've seen on a baseball field in quite some time. They threw all logic out the window and used Eric Swanson missing a fastball up and into Mike Trout in a 2-run ball game on Saturday as some sort of excuse to incite a brawl that the Mariners, frankly, had no business being a part of. At the last possible moment, the Angels swapped out their scheduled starter for an opener who basically served as a hitman for acting manager Phil Nevin. And who was it who instigated a brawl by chirping at Jesse Winker from the top of the steps? Well, that would be none other than Anthony Rendon, who just so happens to be out for the season with a wrist injury. And the other two Angels ejected for their hand in today's brawl? Yeah, a pair of relievers. Meanwhile, the Mariners lost Winker, J.P. Crawford, and for some reason, Julio Rodriguez. You see the issue here? And that's not to mention the fact Seattle entered today without Ty France as well. And yet, despite the Mariners running out a glorified AAA lineup for the final 8 innings of this game, the Angels were only able to win by 1. Enough said. Be sure to join us on tomorrow's episode of Locked On Mariners on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Should be a fun one.
Jimmy Garoppolo is on schedule. Now, how much longer will he be on the 49ers? The San Francisco quarterback is progressing through his rehab schedule well after offseason shoulder surgery. The expectation is that once Garoppolo is cleared to go, the trade market will heat up for him, and the 49ers will deal him somewhere he can start, or at least compete to start. Trey Lance has been QB1 in the Bay Area this offseason with Nate Sudfeld as his backup. Jimmy Garoppolo is due to count almost $27 million on the cap for the Niners this season. Dealing him would clear more than $24 million from their books. And at that price, some teams may be willing to bet San Francisco just cuts him if they can't get a deal they like. The College World Series ended with a story even Hollywood writers would look at and go, nah, too on the nose. The Ole Miss Rebels won the College World Series, going from the last at-large bid into the tournament to the last team standing after scoring 3 runs in the 8th inning to beat the Oklahoma Sooners. The only thing that would have made it more storybook is if they had done it in the 9th. That means the College World Series title will remain in the state of Mississippi after Mississippi State won the crown last year. This is also the 3rd straight year that the SEC has won the title. The LIV Invitational Series received 2 more marquee names on Sunday. Matthew Wolff, who won a PGA tournament just 1 month after turning pro in 2019 and whose swing has become somewhat of an iconic talking point for its unique style, is planning on playing in the LIV Golf Tournament at Pumpkin Ridge in Oregon. This is LIV's first event in the United States. Wolff has struggled on tour as of late and is ranked 74th in the world after having missed 7 of the last 12 cuts, something he won't have to worry about in the LIV Series. Joining Wolff is the number 2 amateur in the world, Spain's Eugenio Chacarra. He announced on Twitter that he was leaving Oklahoma State to turn pro after he received an offer he couldn't pass up. The LIV Golf Tour has now become the Godfather, apparently. And on the diamond, the Cincinnati Reds got out of the Bay with a series win over the San Francisco Giants.
Winning is fun. The Cincinnati Reds have won a 3-game series here at Oracle Park in San Francisco, taking today's game 10-3 with an offensive onslaught. Hi there, I'm Stephen Offenbaker from the Locked On Reds podcast, and coming to you live from Oracle Park, where the Reds again have wrapped up a series win against the San Francisco Giants. After not winning a game on the last homestand, they managed to come out here to the left coast and take 2 of 3 from the Giants in a game that saw a lot of action. Nick Senzel went 3 for 3. Joey Votto had 2 doubles in this game, and not to be outdone, David Bell managed to get himself ejected at the end of the top of the 9th for arguing balls of strikes with the home plate umpire. Tyler Mahle was on the mound today for the Reds. He went 6 2/3, giving up 3 runs as we get closer and closer to the start of Hug Watch season here in Cincinnati. Enjoy these starts while they last. He's gone at least 6 innings in his last 3 starts, and I don't think we're going to get to see many more starts from Tyler Mahle in a Cincinnati Reds uniform.
Disciplinary hearings for Deshaun Watson will go on this week after months of a story surrounding his involvement with more than 20 women, sexual misconduct, and a slew of civil lawsuits, most of which are now settled out of court. But we still don't know what the plan is for the Cleveland Browns should Deshaun Watson miss some or most of the season. Joining me now from Locked On Browns to try and give us some insight on that, Jeff Lloyd. Jeff, let's say Deshaun Watson is gone for the year. What is plan B for the Cleveland Browns in a year where they hope to contend for a Super Bowl?
First things first, I tend to believe that they have a ton of faith in Jacoby Brissett. They are going to play a style of football in 2022 that's going to be relied upon a very, very good defense. The defense closed the season well last year, 9 games having given up 16 points or less. They still have Nick Chubb. They still have Kareem Hunt. They have other running backs. They think Amari Cooper is going to make a big difference for them in the passing game, regardless of who the quarterback is, just due to the fact that you're not dealing with a high-level personality, Amari Cooper. He plays in a much more laid-back style. David Njoku should be somebody who should emerge this year through the play-action game. There was a stretch for the Indianapolis Colts where Jacoby Brissett threw 18 touchdowns and only 4 interceptions. The Browns hope they can get that type of player. I think the big question is what would be the backup plan to Jacoby Brissett if you're thinking Deshaun Watson is out for an entire calendar year. Josh Dobbs has, to this point in his NFL career, has very limited playing time. The success was not very good. They may like him. They, may think highly of him. I don't think anybody think there's a realistic option there. But with Jacoby Brissett, I don't think they can truly bank on that. There are veteran quarterbacks on the market. You feel you have a nice plan in place. I still don't think that they believe they're going to lose Deshaun Watson for an entire calendar year. That may change. And if that does, I expect a lot of activity to bring in at least another quarterback, if not to maybe take Jacoby Brissett's place as the quarterback for the Browns in 2022, but certainly to give him a run for his money.
Yeah, perhaps they jump into the Jimmy Garoppolo market, running an offense very similar to what San Francisco runs with Kyle Shanahan out in the Bay Area. But that leaves the elephant in the room, and that is Baker Mayfield, who is technically still on this Cleveland roster. He does not want to be there. It doesn't seem as though the Browns want him to be there either. You just gave me a 2-minute answer about plan B if Deshaun Watson's not on the field and didn't say Baker Mayfield. So what are they going to do with Baker Mayfield?
I have no doubts that, the trade market, it's imminent as far as the teams that are interested. And for the Browns, there's 2 ways to look at this. As we all feel, there's rumored, Seattle Seahawks and the Carolina Panthers have interest. They both have done with their OTAs now. And I think neither one made the move going into it because it's really hard to tell. Young quarterbacks, go out there, perform the best you can. We're evaluating you. But meanwhile, the guy over there who can't practice with the bad shoulder and healing is going to be the guy anyway. So none of this means anything. Now that both teams have had their OTAs, they probably feel that they would be better suited. Carolina, it's a weird situation because you'd bring in Baker Mayfield to maybe try and save Matt Rule's job. I don't think Baker Mayfield goes into Carolina and all of a sudden we talk about the Carolina Panthers being a threat to the NFC playoffs. Seattle Seahawks, it's a little bit of a different ballgame. He's not going to have to throw as much. He's got a big-time, deep playmaker. He's got a nuanced route runner in Lockett. The Seahawks like to play defense. They like to run the ball, similar to what the 2022 Cleveland Browns will be if they do not have Deshaun Watson. But it's time to move on. And if you're the Browns, I think the best return of investment that you're looking for here is not necessarily somebody to take most of Baker's money. It's maybe what you can get back. You lost a lot of trade assets in moving Deshaun Watson here and what you gave to the Houston Texans. I think Seattle would maybe be able to say, look, we'll say it's a day 3 pick. Say we win, we make the playoffs. Say we, win our division, even God. I think maybe with a chance for that pick to increase in value for the Browns, knowing that maybe Seattle will pay less for the contract, but maybe would be willing to give up a little bit more. I think Carolina, and that would be the tougher spot for Baker because you're going down there to save somebody's job. And it's not like Baker Mayfield, Matt Rule have this history together where they know each other and, hey, we can help each other out. I'm in a tough spot. You're in a tough spot. It just seems Seattle's the much more favorable spot. And I think as far as, future assets for the Browns, and look, you're committed to the 18.9 to Baker Mayfield right now, any way you slice it. So start to recoup some of the things you lost.
Check out Locked On Browns on your favorite podcast app, including Odyssey. Jeff Lloyd and Garrett Bush bring you a daily look inside the new signal caller of the Browns, at least for now. Coming up, what does the future hold for Deebo Samuel in San Francisco? What's next for Deebo Samuel? According to ESPN reports, he has not rescinded his trade request despite being with the team for some of their off-season work. So with training camp looming, we want to know, what is the timeline here? What is the future of one of the game's best players? Joining me now from Locked On 49ers and, of course, the Peacock and Williamson show, Brian Peacock. Brian, the 49ers have said they don't want to trade Deebo Samuel. Deebo Samuel has said he doesn't want to be there. So how do we reach a resolution to this conflict?
Well, Peter, I don't think that 49ers fans have to worry that Deebo Samuel's not going to get signed. And Deebo Samuel's own teammate, George Kittle, is not too worried about it. In fact, he thinks the timeline for Deebo Samuel is exactly the same it was for him 2 years ago, which was the exact same timeline as it was for Fred Warner last year. And the 49ers haven't been shy about paying their stars amongst the top of their peers. Now, I think the 49ers probably had a lower number for Deebo Samuel in December and in January when they were trying to figure out their plan. And then Christian Kirk happened, and then a bunch of other things happened. And then the A.J. Brown trade happened, who has the same agent as Deebo Samuel. So clearly his agent has a plan. Clearly Deebo hasn't seen the dollar figure yet that makes him want to sign. I do think it's going to happen in the next 3 weeks before training camp, as it did with Fred Warner and as it did with George Kittle. But they got to get the numbers right. And with Deebo, and this was the same with George Kittle, and he's kind of opened up about it more recently about how, he called negotiating a contract like having braces. Like, you hate it while it's happening. Then once they're off, you feel great about it, and you kind of forgot they were ever there. And so that's how it is when you're negotiating a contract. And it's not always easy when you're the player and you hear numbers, and and it's the team's job and the negotiator's job to keep the dollars low, and the player and the agent are trying to keep the dollars as high as they can. They tried their leverage play at the draft. It worked for A.J. Brown getting out of town and getting his new contract. Didn't work for Deebo. And so Deebo has to negotiate with the 49ers. I think they're going to get a deal done. I think it benefits all sides. And like George Kittle, when he was going through this, he thought, man, am I going to have to hold out of OTAs? Am I going to have to hold out of training camp? But they were able to get a deal done. And there was some times when he was pretty frustrated about it. And I'm sure that's what Deebo's going through right now. But I do think he will get a deal done. And I do think the 49ers are going to sign him at some point late July before training camp gets rolling.
The metaphor I like to use is that superstar contracts are like bacon. They seem like they're not even close until all of a sudden they're done. And that is probably what's going to end up happening here. It seems like I think that one of the things that has been discussed around, let's say, the Packers and Davante Adams is, Davante didn't want to be there. And so that suddenly says something about Jordan Love's development. How much has that been part of the discussion here, where Deebo Samuel, he's unhappy, he wants to be traded? How much of that for 49ers fans reflects to them on his feelings on the future of Trey Lance?
I don't think that's a part of it at all. Deebo's numbers were fine when Trey Lance played. Trey Lance can open up we saw a big touchdown pass from Trey Lance to Deebo Samuel that Jimmy Garoppolo would never attempt and never throw and wouldn't be able to pull it off, buying time in the pocket and chucking it across the field, deep down the field. So Deebo Samuel's high-end production could be even higher if Trey Lance is the guy that the 49ers hope and think he is. I really just think it's a leverage play, and they're going to be asking for a trade until they sign the new contract. And it's really the only thing they have right now is to keep as much pressure as they can on the 49ers to come with as much money as they can. But we saw Deebo Samuel already show up to minicamp because he didn't want to get fined, right? And it's a lot worse, the fines in training camp, than they were in minicamp. If there was a time you were going to put your foot down and not show up and take a fine, it'd be the one minicamp, get that one fine. But now you're going to get fined every day if you don't show up to training camp. So at some point, I think there will be a resolution to this. I think part of it is some of the funny money that are on other contracts, Tyreek Hill's money. People, the agents love to throw around the total dollars, but Tyreek Hill's not going to see the $40 million a year at the end of his contract. A.J. Brown's $25 million per year, but he's backloaded as well. He's got a cap number of $37 million in the last year of his deal. And his cap number is only, $20 million in base salary in 2024. It's a low base salary this year. It's $15 million base salary in 2025. So if the 49ers want to play it with real dollars, which is, they've been a team that does the most real dollars, I think, in the NFL, either top one or top two, with not utilizing the dead money and not playing that game. I think they would rather sign Deebo to a real contract that they might see the end of in 4 years and have an opportunity to sign him again, rather than having that poison pill at the end of it, which pretty much guarantees that you're going to cut that player after, 3/4 of the contract.
And finally, I guess sometimes the old saying of, if you can't beat him, join him, doesn't always work. Corey Perry tried everything. He made his third straight Stanley Cup final as a player. His previous two before this were with the Dallas Stars and Montreal Canadiens. Both teams lost to the Tampa Bay Lightning. So he did what any person might do. He joined the Bolts. Then they lost to the Avalanche. After winning the Cup in 2007, Perry has done everything he can to get another, but it looks like he will have to wait to try again next year. Thanks for making Locked On Sports today your first listen. Now go find your favorite team's Locked On podcast and make them your second listen. Coming up tomorrow, we get an update on the Major League Baseball season, as they are now center stage in the sports world. So at least until tomorrow, stay locked on sports today.
Locked On Podcast Network and Odyssey present Locked On Sports Today.